Oh, Tekken 7. This was the game that made many people feel excited to go back to fighting games. This was the game that put the Tekken series back in the sphere of relevancy outside its core fanbase. Since not only this game showed an increase in players throughout the world, but also many popular Twitch streamers and YouTubers decided to try it out, such as Forzen, Moon, Donkey, and XQC. Of course, Tekken 7 also reached its expected targeted sales, with over 6 million copies sold worldwide. But in face of these great news, I find it impressive how this game came out almost 4 years ago for consoles and PC, and we still have an atrocious online experience. For example, rage quitters do not receive any real penalty for living in the middle of a match.
You serious?
If you have made it this far without falling asleep, congratulations! I hope to at least try to make you feel skeptical about the future of this franchise, as someone who grew up with this series. For those wondering who I am, I'm just a random nobody who grew up with Tekken, with most of my experiences coming from playing online. I have played Tekken 2 up to Tekken 5, and then I stopped playing Tekken because I never owned a PlayStation 3 nor 4. As you might have guessed, I was excited to discover that Tekken 7 was coming to PC, and I jumped right away to play this game in the first month of Season 1 in 2017. And I have been playing this game ever since, with a measly, 50 hours of playtime? Or something like that. I know for the biggest Tekken enthusiasts, that is simply a rookie number. Moving on, the number one issue you notice straight away when launching this game is that there is barely any single-player content. You have the Mishima storyline, which is a masterpiece by the way.
殺す前に一つ聞いておく。貴様なぜ母のことを知っている？八条家の名残か何かか？かつて和美殿には命を助けられた。ただそれだけのこと。
A single story fight with the vanilla release characters, the useless arcade mode no one cares about, the treasure mode to unlock cosmetic items in which the game doesn't even allow you to wear a hat and change hairstyles at the same time, and wait, I think that's it. I'm not forgetting anything else, I think. So, the thing is, the previous Tekken game, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, did not sell well, and oh boy, trust me when I say that one of the worst things that you can do is to tell your corporate overlords in an executive meeting that the product you are responsible for did not meet its targeted sales. It's a miracle we got Tekken 7 in the first place, and despite no official statement about this game's budget being released, we can see that Tekken 7 had a tighter budget due to the lack of single-player content, downgrade on the character models, and it was the first time that Tekken was using the Unreal Engine, which I assume the developers were less comfortable with. Because of this game's development was heavily focused on the gameplay as its saving grace. And holy crap, did it really pay off! The core gameplay of Tekken 7 is really satisfying, like, it feels really good when you surprise your opponent with a rage drive.
What? I didn't even know that.
When you clutch the round with a dramatic slow-mo effect.
Hey, I'm getting a heart attack. He's got full meter. Knee's gonna touch.
Oh!
Or when you feel so amazed that you blocked a snake edge that you forget to launch punish it. Eventually, Tekken 7 got more popular after its PC/console release, with the game peaking at 150k viewers during EVO 2017, and then 240k viewers during EVO 2019, with only Smash Ultimate viewership being ahead of Tekken. Tekken 7 also sold more than 4 million copies in 2019, and reaching 6 million copies in 2020, which is already more than Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag 2 sales combined. Even Harada, who was the director and producer of Tekken for many years, admitted this to be the first Tekken game to do financially so well much after its release period. Despite this success, Tekken 7 still has many glaring issues which have been plaguing the game for years, such as the fact that there are no official guides or tutorials explaining you the basics and mechanics of the game, apart from receiving some very generic advice when you are loading a match or playing the Mishima storyline. So, in order for people to effectively learn this game, they have to watch some YouTube videos and written guides made by the community. The same applies to learning frame data, since just like all previous Tekken titles, Tekken 7 does not have frame data display, and again, you have to check out community guides to know the frames of your character. That is, until December of 2019, when the Tekken team released the frame data display for everyone, which is great news, right? Of course, they had to ruin the excitement by locking this basic learning tool as a paid DLC, which is very reassuring to hear when other fighting games provide you this tool on release for free. Perhaps they expected the Tekken community to feel blessed with the mere fact that frame data display exists? I don't know. Even if you still don't feel discouraged from getting into Tekken, well, there is more to take in. For me, Season 3 was when this game started going downhill, which, of course, was when Leroy Smith and Fakumram were released. We all know how very well balanced these two characters were, especially on release. Let's start with Leroy. Leroy was a very hyped character, and if you were there waiting to try him out, you know what I mean. His design is very cool, to put it simply, and he got his own trailer music as well.
Now I know what I must do. Fight for the greater good. Fight to even up the score. Fight for my neighborhood. Fight to get my just reward.
I could feel the excitement in this character, but when he came out, everyone quickly saw Leroy was broken. Not even top tier, no, just straight up broken tier.
Always miss you!
He was so ridiculous that I stopped playing this game altogether, and I'd rather fight Jinpachi in Tekken 5 in the hardest difficulty, because I would at least unlock a cutscene and a new character every time I'll beat him. If you still don't feel convinced about Leroy, well, let me just tell you that this guy came out in December 2019, and 1 month later, we already had pro players maining him for EVO Japan 2020. And I can assure you that normally it takes much more than 1 month of practice to play with a character at a pro level. Also, it was not just a few pros, mind you, more like out of the top 8 players, 6 were just playing Leroy. I felt no excitement whatsoever when I watched the top 8. Eventually, the Tekken team nerfed this character to a more acceptable level, despite still being very strong and taking their sweet time to do so. Overall, this is not a fun character to play with or against, given how utterly strong he is at everything Tekken related, like having good pokes, good launchers, good range, good frames, good wall pressure, everything while having easy execution. It's just stressful and not fun. A few months later, Fakumram came around and surprise, surprise, another DLC character released in a broken state. That's right, Fakumram is a large character and his moves have insane range, so you would expect him to have almost no evasion, right? But nope, somehow he was more evasive than freaking Ling Xiaoyu because he was released with wonky hurt boxes and was simply able to clip through your moves. Due to the pandemic, this time there were no more offline tournaments to call out on these problems, so the Tekken team took more than a month to fix this game-breaking bug, even though when the patch came out, it didn't fully fix him and he was still able to clip through some moves. This has reached such a state that Arslan Ash, the EVO 2019 champion, said that the Pakistani scene simply banned this character from being played in tournaments due to how Fakumram was pretty much another release Leroy Boy type of character. Good range, insane damage, crazy mix-ups, scary wall pressure, and of course, easy execution. Don't forget that part. You gotta sell those DLCs, am I right? Eventually, a second patch fixed his hurt boxes, but they took their sweet time again. Besides this DLC character disaster, Season 3 felt pretty dry. There was nothing much to look forward to, and if I remember correctly, I barely touched this game during the whole summer. It was pretty much a dead game to me. Thankfully, Season 4 dropped in November 2020, and I felt like I came back from the dead because now I could reliably block snake edges online thanks to the improved netcode, and my main character got some pretty interesting buffs as well. It couldn't get better than this, but I was wrong. While the new netcode improved the overall connection, it also introduced painful bugs, such as random stutters on the PC version that would occur a fifth of my matches.
Oh my god, you guys see that? It went down to 21 frames, man.
And it felt especially nice when they appeared in the middle of a combo. Supposedly, Season 4 should have increased the number of people playing Tekken again, but whenever I hopped into ranked and even quick player matches, I was barely finding anyone to fight against. Like, I know I am relatively speaking high ranked and there is less players there, but I swear I remember finding opponents much faster doing the dry Season 3, so what the hell is going on? Later, I discovered that simply reloading the game fixed this problem and I was finding opponents in a matter of seconds. So everything was fine for like 10 minutes and then suddenly I could not find anyone again and I would have to start the game once again. It's as if the game was more dead than Fallout 76. I don't know how widespread this, matchmaking bug was, but I at least know that other Tekken players I talked with were also having this issue, so I was not the only one. All the issues I pointed out so far, I was somewhat able to tolerate, but what pushed me over the edge is the fact that this game has been out for almost 4 freaking years, and there is still no inbuilt system to punish cheaters. All you have to do is just enable your scripts, go to the shitty streets of ranked and profit. It's free real estate for hackers.
He has auto punish on for this, see? And he's not blocking the lows. See? Hop kick. Okay, watch this. He turns it on. This is where he turns it on. He's like, I'm losing, let me turn it on. Instant running 2 at the start, okay? All the mids are coming out. See? Like, did you not see the jab I threw out? He's doing his hack is crushing certain moves. Low parry? A low parry, a down 4? Really? Really? Because everyone knows you block the down 4, you get better damage.
Even if you wish to take the extra effort to tweet at Harada or Michael Murray, the current producer, you have to pray that they notice your tweet and only then they might do something about it. Let's say that you don't want to use macros or scripts because you are afraid of catching a virus or something like that. Well, no problem. You can always shut down your game by pressing Alt F4 when you are about to lose a match instead. Because firstly, your opponent won't get any rank points, and secondly, you also don't lose any points for doing this. The system pretty much erases this fight from everyone's record like it never happened. As you can see in this picture, the right side player seems to have a winning streak of 109 wins. But the catch is, every time this player is about to lose, bam, Alt F4. Well, in fact, there is a penalty for rage quitting. You get a disconnection rate increase, and the only thing this does is other players who are about to fight you can see your disconnection rate, and if they think it's too high, they might refuse the match. That's it. That's all it does. But there is more to it. If you are playing on PC, you can go into the game's files and reset your disconnection rate back to 0. So yes, that means the game is not storing this data on a server. It's all locally stored on your machine. Like, could you imagine if MOBA games like League of Legends or Dota did not not have a punishment system for players leaving in the middle of a match? Bandai Namco is very lucky that the hackers and rage quitters are not infesting Tekken like a disease, because for some reason they're not very keen to get into fighting games, but that's just my guess. As a final point for the topic, I also see too many players who never rematch, not even once or twice. It is a bit hard to explain why this is a bad thing, and also debatable, because it's in your right not wanting to fight the same player again. However, from my point of view, when I play against randoms online, I want to get better at the game, and you can only improve at certain things when you keep fighting the same player and character, like if you want to improve your reactions against specific moves, for example. This situation feels even worse for me because around my rank, I start seeing less players, so the pool of available players is smaller, and that, faced with the matchmaking bug, which I previously mentioned, means that I'm only spending 2 out of 15 minutes in an actual match, which at this point I would rather stop playing Tekken for the rest of the day. I suspect that I get many no rematchers because I play Lucky Chloe? I mean, perhaps J-pop idols are very fearful creatures that you should stay away from. I mean, imagine running away from them. Nowadays, we see more games trying to adopt the games as a service strategy, which is pretty much a revenue model where you keep updating and adding more content to a game for a long period of time, as opposed to games as a product, where you release a game and then start working on the next one. If I'm not wrong, I think all Tekken titles have been treated as a product until Tekken 7, or at least for lasting these many years, since this game sells season passes and we are currently in season 4. There are people who think games as a service is a bad model for the players, but I personally think it's not necessarily bad for fighting games. When done right, that is. And I don't think that applies to Tekken 7, sadly. One of the key aspects of what makes a good game as a service is having regular communication and engagement with your community. But the Tekken community often gets the silence treatment for months, and even small patches that only fix bugs also take months to come out. Despite this problem, Tekken heavily relies on content creators and pro players to keep afloat and attract new people so much more than other games that I think Namco needs them more than they need Namco, mainly because of bad communication and no official tutorials. However, these passionate people who are willing to spend their personal time and money to create useful content and share their knowledge with the community are not even recognized by the Tekken team or Bandai Namco. There is a content creator called That Blasted Salami, also known as Arya, who has been making Tekken guides for years, with one of the best production values out there that I could see them being featured in mainstream media.
Brian Fury. Part man, part cop, all silent. Brian has a dominating grip on the mid-range.
I remember some months ago, Arya admitted to feeling very underappreciated for Bandai Namco and the Tekken producers, not even simply mentioning him on their social media, despite Arya trying to reach out to them.
We've been making these really like TV quality level videos for 3 years at our expense, at our time, and it's like none of you even follow me. None of you. I've tried to reach out, but it's completely ignored. And it's like, and as a contrast, I make one video for Killer Instinct, and Keats, the main battle designer, is like, yeah, great work. You know, he's gonna possibly narrate some of the future videos. It's ridiculous.
I mean, you can argue that Bandai Namco has no obligations towards the content creators, which is true, but I also have no obligation to keep buying the season passes if I don't like how you treat the community and the players. I'm pretty sure they understand the money language. One day, I came across an interesting interview with Harada where he says that the future of fighting games is to have artificial intelligence acting as a user user input aid. Yep, you heard that right. I think that the AI aiding this process a little could make it possible for us to increase our player range, followed by input commands that are simply too difficult to execute would cease to exist. So whenever you would miss, let's say, an electric wind god fist or Brian's stunned jet upper, the AI would step in and correct the input for you. Human execution would cease to exist. This is just baffling. If anything needs an AI, it's not the players, it's them. I'm sure an AI would do a better freaking job listening to the community at this point. Alright, I'll explain. I think the term AI Harada uses here is actually an euphemism for macros. By definition, macros are keystrokes that execute a sequence of commands. Putting that into Tekken terms, imagine if you could execute an electric or a Korean backdash with the press of a single button, just one button. That is what hackers in Tekken 7 currently do to have perfect execution, and I fail to see how this is any different from Harada's explanation of an AI that acts as a user input aid. This take is downright hilarious, that it's like saying the future of first-person shooters is to have an aim assist AI that corrects your aim every time you miss a shot. Well, actually, this already exists. It's called aimbotting, and it gets you banned from any online FPS with an anti-cheat system. Another point is, Harada claims that the purpose of this AI is to increase our player range. So his reasoning is that many people don't get into fighting games because it's hard to execute the moves. I think that is an interesting hypothesis to test. If Tekken actually had tutorials that teach people how this game works in the first place, that is. Holy crap! I can't stress it enough how important it is to have in-game built tutorials with ease of access, but the Tekken team hasn't figured this out yet. Regardless, Harada has stated multiple times that he wants to have more people get into Tekken, which is fair, I have the same wish. But what grinds my gears is that after its release, Tekken 7 is becoming more and more unfriendly to potentially new players, because it's getting more bloated. Let me explain. First, after the Kunimitsu release, there are currently 14 DLC characters, and we know there is going to be a 15th one. If you want to get good at the game, you will eventually have to purchase the DLC characters, because you cannot try them out in practice mode unless you buy them, even if you never intend to play with those characters. So, if I were to put myself in the shoes of someone who is potentially interested in Tekken 7 and is not a hardcore fan, I would check out, let's say, the game's page in the Steam store and see the prices. And my first thought would be, oh boy, there is a lot of DLC content over here. After doing some math on what you need to purchase, I came with 3 different purchasing outcomes, and they're all based on my own regional prices. For the first one, which I assume is the option most people who have been playing this game since Season 1 went with, you buy Tekken, Season 1 up to Season 4, and Eliza, because Eliza is not included in any Season Pass. This would cost you 140 euros. For the second option, you buy Tekken, Noctis, and Geese, because you don't care about cosmetics and the lovely bowling DLC, Season 2 up to Season 4, and Eliza. This will cost you 131 euros. For the last option, you buy Tekken Ultimate Edition, which includes the main game, Season 1, Season 2, and Eliza, plus Season 3 and 4. In total, this is 130 euros. So you have to make a financial commitment of at least 130 euros to get good in Tekken, unless you wait for a discount. I'm not going to comment on the prices themselves, so let's assume you don't feel discouraged from this information and you buy all the DLC. Fair enough. That is when we move on to my second argument as to why I think this game is bloated. Now that you have purchased all DLC, you have access to a total of 50 characters, and 51 later. However, out of those 50 characters, Panda and Kuma have the same moveset. So for the sake of the argument, let's just assume you have to learn 49 different matchups rather than 50. Again, I made some math and I discovered that there are 5,177 moves registered registered in the move list, and the average number of moves per character is approximately 104. Oh, also, don't forget that they keep adding new moves to all characters each season, so if you want to reach pro level, you need to have a PhD in Tekken. But even if that is not your goal, I can assure you that you regularly find people in Ranked that exploit your matchup knowledge gaps, so you still need a good amount of knowledge to reach high ranks. You might argue that you don't need to learn all the moves, because it's rare to have a match where you use all of them. This is true, but it still discourages new people from committing to the game, or even veteran players from trying a new character, because just looking at the move list, it feels overwhelming. And instead of using all of your cognitive resources to learn the moves, you also have to take the extra effort of mentally filtering the useful moves from those that are almost useless. Third and last point, even if you're still committed and you practice against a lot of different matchups, well, good freaking luck trying to find a match against the least popular characters before you forget all that knowledge you gathered. I think you'll have an easier time finding Wally than a Leo player. Seriously, one of the things I noticed about the Tekken series is that there is a big disparity between amount of information you need to know and how much the game teaches you about it. And I kept wondering for a long time, why? Why does the Tekken team keep making such complex games and not giving us any guidance to ease the learning process? It doesn't make sense to me. That is when I came across an article about Harada. Yeah, it's always Harada, I know. Anyways, I saw an article where he talks about why Tekken doesn't have an official frame data display. Of course, when Harada talked about this, it was even before Tekken 7's arcade release. But I think it still sheds some light on Tekken's game design. So he says that the reason why Tekken never had frame data display before is because if players could easily have access to such data within the game, it will allow players to uncover and find out the intricacies and details about characters and their moveset much faster, which can lead to an impact on the game's lifespan. This also has an effect on the players who like to strategize and discuss the game's characters and balance, since all their arguments will no longer be arguments, since there will be the ultimate authority, a word of God, in the game. Lastly, if the frame data was displayed and freely available, every single player would easily have the answers to moves and situations an opponent can throw at you, basically. It would be a lot less interesting and reduce the fun. Since there is frame data in Tekken 7, I'm not going to dissect these arguments, but I hope you can see how, old-fashioned these takes are. Harada is pretty much saying that having frame data display will reduce the fun in Tekken because it will make the game die quicker by reducing the discoverability window, and because the players would have stronger arguments to criticize the team's bad balancing decisions with this information. In other words, withholding information from the player is a design philosophy for Tekken. This philosophy can be the reason why there is still no official tutorials, because by design, the game intends you to figure out all of its mechanics yourself. I previously mentioned that Tekken 7 has more than 5,000 moves, but I didn't mention that the game also has secret moves, moves which are not in the move list. That's correct. An example of this is Asuka's ultimate tackle. Asuka has access to an unbreakable tackle that is not mentioned in the move list, and it's very useful during Okizeme. If you have rage during this, you also get a free rage drive. The game doesn't even mention you this stuff, and yet the Tekken team wants to attract a bigger audience. It just feels very backwards gameplay design from my perspective. If I had to guess why Harada adopted this philosophy, I think it's because he grew up playing fighting games in Japanese arcades. And back in those good old days, the games didn't teach you anything. You just popped in some coins and play against the CPU or other players. That's it. If you wanted to invest hours into getting better, you'd have to figure out the game yourself or ask a more experienced player if they were willing to share their knowledge. But of course, this no longer applies in the age of the internet and in plain 2021. It just seems lazy to me. Perhaps when they told you not to ask them for poop, maybe they meant to say I'm a stubborn Japanese boomer. Lastly, I think considering all these issues, it's no surprise why the community didn't feel happy watching the glorious chin of the Polish Prime Minister for 5 seconds. I mean, seriously, after season Tekken 4 was released, they stayed silent for 3 months. Then Harada talks for an hour during the Roundtable event about how the pro players can no longer advertise the game for free due to the pandemic, and he kept mentioning numbers of copies sold, sales, numbers, and more numbers.
The numbers! What are they saying?
And then, this is all they have to show? Not even the new stage? I guess they forgot to polish the game first.
Very good! Very good! Yay!
To conclude, I think Tekken is overall a good series, don't get me wrong on that, but I am very concerned with its future. I just don't think Tekken is in good hands at the moment. Harada and Murray seem too complacent with this game's financial success, and they seem a bit too focused on the sales and numbers, and not so much on the quality of the game. At this point, I'm only hoping that they learn from Tekken 7's mistakes, and the next game will be much better, but I'm not holding my breath for it. I understand if you don't exactly agree with what I've said, but I hope you can recognize that Tekken 7 is not a perfect game, and I made this video to try to make a difference to anyone who cares about Tekken as much as I do. A big shout out to Frame Whisperer for giving me inspiration to make this video. Without you, I'm not sure if I would muster the courage to invoke the wrath of the Nam cops, so thank you very much. Oh, lastly, as old Ares would say,
this game sucks online. This game fucking sucks online.